Welcome. Hello. So we've got a minute until we start, but just thought I'd say hi to everybody coming in. Hello. How are we all? You'll see in the chat just a couple of pointers around what we're planning to do today and what we're planning to do as we come together. So we'll have some readings, we'll have a writing ritual, and we'll have a little breakout space for us all. But yeah, we'll wait for another minute until we have the rest of our participants. Hello, hi everybody, hi. Hello, hello. Okay, it's 1:30. Shall I begin? Sure, okay. Sounds good. Okay, welcome everybody to ShortCuts, the plant and story swap, where we get to come together in acknowledgement of our connection with plant life and listen to stories by three wonderful writers and their connection to plants, and to share our own stories with each other. My name's Jules Orcullo. I'm a Filipinx-Australian theatre maker. I'm joined by our curator, Brockenhuus-Schack, and writers Laurrie, Brannigan-Onato, Cara Lopez, and Ryan O'Donnell. If you give us a wave. Hello, hi. I'm based here on Darug country, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the Darug people as the traditional owners of this land from which I'm speaking today. I'd like to acknowledge their elders, past and present, and to acknowledge that First Peoples were the first storytellers of this land and all unceded lands across this country, and their continuing and to acknowledge their continuing custodianship of the land, the waters, and the plant life that sustains and surrounds us today. Do feel free, everybody in the room, to acknowledge the land that you're speaking from in the chat. I'm currently in a green walled bedroom with a Goldilocks plant that's trying to climb up a mirror. I've got dark hair, tan skin, dark eyes. I'm wearing round rimmed glasses and black dungarees. Before I pass over to the panelists to quickly introduce themselves, just wanted to mention that as we'll be sharing some stories today, some of these stories will include some lived experiences, some of which will be sensitive or traumatic in their nature. So if at any point in the hour you'd like to leave the space to breathe, to practice self-care, or just go to the bathroom, do your hair, whatever it is you want to do, please do that and take some time and some space. If you're in need of support within the space, feel free to direct message Writing New South Wales. They're the folks with the W logo in the participant chat on the side, and they'll be on hand to support as well. Yes, welcome again to our amazing writers, Laurrie, Brannigan-Onato, Cara Lopez, and Ryan O'Donnell. Would you please introduce yourselves and your relationship to plants and plant life, perhaps? Yeah. Shall we start with Laurrie and then pass the baton around to the rest of the panelists?
Hi, everyone. I'm Laurrie. I am broadcasting from beautiful Awabakal and Warramai land, from a gorgeous house that I just moved into a little over a week ago. So prior to this call, I spent about half an hour pulling as many plants as I could to have as a backdrop. So I'm sitting here in a green dress on a pink lounge with maybe 1/3 of my houseplants with me. I am predominantly a filmmaker, which explains why I put so much effort into my backdrop. I have been a writer, although it is not something that I do regularly. So I'm feeling quite vulnerable, to be honest, but also really honoured to share this space with you all and with such amazing writers to boot. I am a Filipinx, Aboriginal and Irish individual who grew up on Darug and Darawal country in the Western Sydney suburbs. I have connections to the Northern Rivers region, the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to the countries that you're calling in from and any mob who might be on the call today. I think I am a pretty good houseplant parent. It's honestly something I've only developed in my late 20s. So prior to this, I called myself a black thumb, and I'm trying to become a green thumb. I think it happened as a result of moving into an apartment with no yard. I'm so used to being in houses, so I had to overcompensate by bringing the plants inside. Luckily, I have a backyard now as of a week and a day, so I'm looking forward to continuing my relationship with plants, particularly growing as many flowering native plants as I can and edibles that I can have. That's a snapshot of me. I might pass the mic on to Cara.
Hello, everybody. I'm Cara Lopez. I go by the pronouns she/her, and I'm broadcasting to you from Darug and Guringai country. When we first moved to Australia, I spent most of my time in Darug land, and I pay my respects to all of their elders, past, present, and those who are still emerging. My relationship with plants has always been there, a bit reluctantly, because growing up, I never really understood the relationship that my family members had with plants. To me, they were an additional thing to add to my to-do list for my chores every week. But when I moved out of home in my 30s, I realized that there was a healing power in plants, and this is something that I'll be exploring a lot more in my story. And I want to thank all of you for sharing your time with us today, because the stories that Laurrie and Ryan have also been so wonderful to read over the past few days. I'm passing over to you now, Ryan.
Hello, I'm Ryan. I'm broadcasting from Wallumattagal land in Darug country, where I've spent a large part of my life, actually. And I wish to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So I am a research botanist or plant systematist and part-time bookseller while I'm waiting for my PhD applications to sort themselves out. But prior to getting into plants, I first trained as a filmmaker, and then I sort of fell into opera, and I worked as an opera singer for a few years. But plants sort of captured my attention. I think much more strongly than anything else did. So I sort of abandoned opera and decided to focus on plants instead. And I'll explore why that happened in the piece that I've written. But yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. I'd like to pass to Annie as well, if you'd like to introduce yourself, our curator for this afternoon.
Hi, Hi, I'm Annie. I'm calling in from Darug land today, and would like to acknowledge the traditional owners. Um, my brain has just gone flat.
What's your relationship to plants, Annie?
Well, I am also a terrible gardener, but I have witnessed my mum over the years just spend time constantly cultivating her garden, and have that be her like pride and joy. Um, and it's always been a source of, yeah, it's just been a source of joy for everyone who's like come along to it. So she always has a tendency to like um, share her plants with her friends and neighbors, and yeah, and just often like have a chat and yeah, build relationships that way. And I always found that really interesting and compelling, and sort of something to get back to, I guess, considering that we're all online and all have been isolated in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah.
Thanks, Annie. That inspired this event today as well. That sort of sense of connection between your mum and and all the community members around. Is that right? Yeah. Sick. Well, very, very pleased and honoured to be part of this space. As I say, we're going to hear some readings from these three lovely writers. But before that, I'd like to invite everybody who's in the space today to find some greenery in the environment that you're in. It might be a houseplant, it might be a flower, it might be a clipping, it might be a view of the outdoors, it might be a memory of some greenery that you've experienced recently. It might be the sound of wind rustling through trees and bushes, that kind of thing. I'd like you to sort of find that either in your space or in your mind's eye. And if you're able, I'd like you to settle your eyes on this piece of green. Otherwise, hold the texture or the sound of the breath whispering through the greenery in your mind. And as you do, I'd like you to feel your breath just rising and falling. Remind yourself that you are here. Remind yourself who is present with you today. Who and what is present with you today. And all that has come before you. Who and what has come before you. Okay, let's come back to the room. Thank you for participating today with me. And let's start with our first reading of the day. Our first reader is Cara. Would you like to start us off with your story?
My story is called Lessons in Cultivation, and I'm dedicating this to my grandmother and hope that it inspires her healing as well. The garden in our final home in the Philippines seemed more like a green wall in comparison to the massive aspirational gardens they often featured in Gardening Australia, Better Homes and Gardens, and Vogue Living. Lush bougainvillea hid unattractive metal grates from view and lined the perimeter of our petite courtyard, providing it with privacy and bright bursts of color. Instead of the soft grass, the ground was lined with paving tiles and concrete, the perfect foundation for mismatched pots containing brightly colored bromeliads and orchids, colorful compromises to the lack of space. Mama, my grandmother, spent solid amounts of time tending to the multicolored foliage, something that I couldn't comprehend as a child, even though we spent most of our time together. She often became annoyed with the balls and loud expletives that flew into our yard from the outdoor street basketball court. The plants that grew in the space were mainly decorative, inedible, and chosen for their ability to withstand extreme sunlight and typhoons. The only exception to this was a lone guava seedling that grew by accident, a prelude to the edible garden that I yearned for as an adult. The indoor jungle that I live in now has some similarities with the garden we left behind when my family moved to Australia. My plant choices pay homage to my mother and grandmother's love for establishing green spaces in new homes. My research-driven approach is more similar to my mother's than my grandma's more relaxed approach of encouraging plants to thrive. Google searches and handy hints from plant-focused Facebook groups led me to the Sansevieria, mother-in-law's tongue, and variants of ficus, rubber plants that thrive with minimal care and attention. Eclectic greenery transformed the apartment I share with my partner, from a white cube filled with light-colored furniture to a book lover's version of an urban oasis. Variants of pothos, devil's ivy, and succulents from friends and family are nestled among holiday snaps and photos of loved ones. Stacks of books double as stands for several types of indoor foliage with large expressive leaves, while repurposed ceramic and glass containers mingle with the cascading vines of ivy that are constantly trimmed to minimize excessive growth. Other aesthetic elements came about by accident, A pile of old, wrinkly, purple sweet potatoes from my mother's garden call a metal pot in our kitchen home. After being left uneaten for months, each one grew purple-hued stems with tiny light green leaves and added dimension to the rustic tableau that framed the view from our kitchen window. Over the past couple of years, my interest in cultivating my own ingredients intensified as I developed a stronger love for cooking, evidenced by the piles of hardbound cookbooks beneath sculptural plants. My parents' carefully tended outdoor space provided inspiration through an eclectic mix of organic spinach, tomatoes, and aromatic plants like lemongrass that infused dishes with deeper flavors and greater nutrition in contrast to the produce available from my local greengrocers. For months, I attempted to grow herbs like basil, sage, rosemary, and thyme on our kitchen counter to complement dishes prepared after long workdays. It was a lesson in patience, as some of them were propagated from seeds, whilst others were young seedlings with leaves that were ready to use for cooking. Spoiler alert, I should have paid more attention to Costa and host of many other gardening shows I watched years ago, as none of my herby companions survived beyond 2 months, 3 at most. Other than my old, wrinkly, still live sweet potatoes, the only edible plants that survived were dwarf lemon and lime shrubs from Aldi, each one waiting for the moment they'll be transferred from their pots to a well-tended outdoor space. Our balcony held my shortcomings as a plantita, a semi-obsessive plant auntie in plain sight. Empty vessels are evidence of overwatered fronds, a crime according to outspoken members in various Facebook plant groups, and numerous failed attempts at cultivating my own ingredients without understanding the specific needs of herbs and other edible plants. Despite my herb-related mishaps, gardening became more than just a recreational activity. Like others who rediscovered a love for indoor flora during lockdowns, time spent in my indoor garden, my indoor green space, was an antidote against moments of emotional duress, which are comparable to extremities like drought and storms weathered by plants in the gardens I left behind. While working from home over the past few months, I mirrored my grandmother, who checked on her potted plants several times a day and often included my plants in daily chats with my mum. Gardening enhanced my connection with these two incredible women who remind me that it's an act of love, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. Whether we opt for the textbook definition of plant care, with exact watering or propagating times, or a more laissez-faire approach, gardening resets our energies and allows us to navigate challenging life experiences like illness, relationship breakdowns, or separation due to physical distance. It is also a humbling reminder of the brevity of time, the preciousness of life, and the lessons we can learn from the plants themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that and sending lots of love to your family at this time. I hope they're going well. How's your indoor garden going today, Cara? Are you in your space today?
I moved some of our plants into our spare bedroom so that there's plant company with me.
Nice.
At the moment, I think they're thriving because our apartment feels more like a greenhouse with like the sudden spring heat.
Yes, fair.
And there's so much new growth. I'm so happy.
Amazing. Oh, I'm happy for you. That's really lovely. Thanks, Cara. Thank you. Keen to move swiftly on to get to all of our writers. I'd like to invite Laurrie to share their story with us as well. Hi, Laurrie.
Hi, thank you, Jules. My piece is called Growing Pains. Against all odds, I sprung from infertile soil, a hybrid seedling known only to a few. Born from a mother plant, a hybrid herself, both native and invasive, and a foreign father plant who was lured to poison, both taboo and shaboo. And yet, growth continued, although stunted. When I was a sapling, my father took me to his homeland, a string of some 7,700 islands we now know as the Philippines. I didn't know the language and hardly knew my father. However, the mere 2 weeks left such an impression on my 7-year-old mind. And while I can't remember most of my childhood, I still have vivid memories of the Philippines to this day. My ate in Taglish showing me how to wash from a bucket. My cousins and I stealing mangoes from the neighbor's tree. Riding on an open-top trailer to the province. Cockfights on the street outside. Rats climbing the curtains. Garbage burning. Crying alone. Almost 20 years later, I find myself in my father's homeland once more. However, this time, I'm with a different man, a man I know and who knows me well. We're engaged. And I say I want to take him there so he can understand part of my culture. But the truth is, we're here so I can start to understand the pieces that make me whole. I'm here to understand my father, and by extension, myself. I'm here to dig at the root. This isn't a holiday. This isn't just some tropical destination. I'm not here to stay in a resort, and I'm not here for leisure. I'm here for my story and my culture. I'm here to feel the soil beneath my feet, to bask in the light, to soak in the waters, to connect and grow. But what I found was not what I expected. It was not the healing return I anticipated. Instead, the trip took its toll. I was looking for answers in all the wrong places. I was waiting for it all to fall into place, not knowing it was up to me to put it all together. Recently, I've been getting to know my father and his history. I have learnt of the waves of colonization, the social upheaval and political turmoil. I've learnt about the events which brought my father to this land in the late 80s. I ask him about our ancestors and their names. We speak of our favorite Pinoy dishes. I speak of my love of plants, something that's developed only as an adult. He says he'll ask Papa for a part of the family calamansi tree for me. And so roots begin to take hold until one day I find myself in bloom. The end.
Thank you so much, Laurrie. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and your writing with us, and also your journey with us. It's really special to be able to be here with you, to hear from you today. I'm I'm really excited for you and your calamansi tree. I think that's going to be so great. We've got one in the backyard, and it's just so joyful. Yeah. Do you have any sort of like plans for the yard that you have at the moment, apart from a calamansi tree?
Yeah. I really want to get some finger lime, which are native to Queensland, and I want to get, I heard native ginger is delicious. Of course, I need some lemongrass. So yeah, I've got big, huge plans.
Amazing. That's so great. And yeah, I'm very excited for it to sort of, continue to like foster that connection, and to sort of heal some of the heartbreak that you speak of as well, if it's possible. But we are here if it's not.
No, thank you. I also saw someone just asked what a calamansi tree is.
Yes, yeah, great question.
And I thought I'd just clarify, it's you find them everywhere in the Philippines, but you find a few here. They're like little citrus fruits, almost like a tiny mandarin. And I recently learned you can eat the skin, and apparently it's sweeter than the fruit. I've been doing it wrong my whole life. Anyway, the more you know. So that's a
Nice.
calamansi.
Thanks, Laurrie. And thank you, Zora, for asking the question. Thank you. Yeah, let's say hello to Ryan now. Hi, hello, Ryan.
Hello, how are you doing? Very
I'm good,
well.
thank you. That's good.
I want to add on the calamansi thing. It's
Yeah.
actually a hybrid between kumquat and another species of citrus, which is the closest species is probably mandarin. So
It's a hybrid?
yeah, sort of a mix between
There you go.
kumquat and a mandarin. So there you go.
That's really beautiful, actually. Thank you for sharing that too. Like, yeah, the discoveries we make, the poetry that we write. Great. All right, Ryan. Here to hear your story.
All right. So this is a piece I've written called Love Thy Neighbor. My grandfather was a biologist and my grandmother was a librarian. With this genetic combination, it is perhaps unsurprising that I wound up as a plant systematist and taxonomist. Put simply, systematics is the science which aims to discover, classify, and interpret the evolutionary history of all life on Earth. Taxonomy, then, is one branch of the systematics tree, which concerns itself with how we name and describe this diversity. Where taxonomy provides us with a cast of characters, systematics gives us their dramatic backstory. At the basis level, systematists are simply life's librarians, but we are much more than this. We are also life's biographers, genealogists, and historians. As systematists, we are life's storytellers. At parties, I will often just say botanist when the inevitable question of, so what do you do, comes up, which will invariably be followed up with questions like, why do my succulents keep dying? How often should I water my orchid? Or do I prefer sativa or indica? I will then have to break the bad news that what they really need is a horticulturalist, and that as a botanist, I am in reality a terrible gardener. As a plant systematist, I am more interested in the evolutionary relationships between plants rather than how to grow them or how we as humans may be able to capitalize on their existence. Nevertheless, it was gardening that taught me to take notice of plant life and to recognize the enormous role they play in our lives. I grew carnivorous plants as a child. However, they had all but fallen off my radar until I performed in a university production of Little Shop of Horrors, which reignited my curiosity. After this, I went and bought my first carnivorous plant as an adult from a rather unassuming hobby gardener off Facebook. He showed me through to his backyard where his collection of hanging pitcher plants was growing happily in the humid summer heat. I poured through his selection of cuttings and picked a robust specimen of what I now know to be Nepenthes maxima biventricosa, a hybrid of two species, Nepenthes maxima from New Guinea and Indonesia, and Nepenthes ventricosa, a species endemic to the Philippine highlands. This hybrid does not occur naturally, and it is only through human interference that it exists. I feel that there is some sort of cosmic poetry in this hybrid plant of partial Philippine ancestry making its way into my hands, another hybrid of partial Philippine ancestry, to live out the remainder of our lives in a country far removed from where our stories ostensibly began. Like Audrey 2 and Seymour Krelborn, this new plant had a hold on me. In my characteristic and occasionally disabling hyperfocus, I had to learn everything about it. It started off simple with questions of how do I care for this thing and where did it come from? But soon I needed to know more. I learned about its close relatives, its family tree, the spectacular evolutionary forces that had shaped it over millions of years. And from there, I was compelled to expand my horizons to the whole plant kingdom. I learned about the ecology of plants and their place within the vast network of life. Finally, there came the time where I would learn of the dire existential threats that all plants face, all products of our own doing. The prospect of a slow and torturous heat death as a result of an ever-warming climate, being burnt to ash as rich rainforest land is torched to make way for agriculture, or winding up on the black market where the narcissistic need for the newest, most exotic plants drives the poor and desperate from countries ravaged by colonial forces to hunt for these natural wonders, forcibly rip them from the earth and transport them to wider shores, or they will undoubtedly perish, perched atop a neglected bookshelf, far removed from their hothouse jungle habitat. I felt a visceral pain when I realized what we as a species had done and will continue to do. I grieve for the species that we have lost and for the species that will soon share the same fate. I'd grown very attached to the plants in my care, and in turn, they had helped me to care deeply about the world around me. It is because of this that I chose to abandon my previous career ambitions and instead pursue a life of science. It is easy to look at certain plants and think, who cares? Why bother saving them? The same can be said of any biological group. Fungi, fish, birds, frogs, mammals, the list goes on. But who made us as humans the arbiters of life or death? I'm a firm believer in the equality of species, in that every species has an inherent right to exist just because, not simply because they can deliver to us as humans new foods, medicines, or profit. As a small tribute to my strict Catholic Filipino upbringing, here is a reading from the book of Matthew. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am no longer religious, but as a biologist, I still treat this as gospel. It seems a condition of contemporary concrete living is that we have become isolated from those around us, and it is now rare for us to know who our neighbors are. So too, on the planetary scale, we have forgotten that we share this space with others, many of whom have been here for eons before us, and who will likely persist long after we are gone. I believe that as a systematist, it is not enough to simply name and describe the infinite variation of nature to satisfy our innate need for order. We must treat this endeavor as an act of knowing and respect. We must learn our neighbors' names and who we share our planet with, so that we may someday hope to understand them as equals. We must listen to them and tell their stories before they are reduced to silence. The end.
Thank you, Ryan. It is so wonderful to have your perspective in this space, and it's so moving to think of plants in that way, in the way that we share space with them and our relationship to them as respectful equals. You mentioned sort of like the dire fate that befalls us and plants alike, and I wonder if there's like one specific action that you would want everybody in this room to take right now. What might that be?
I mean, there are so many things that we can do, but I guess as consumers, I think one of them prevalent, I guess I'll talk about something that we're talking about in this session, particularly in terms of houseplants. You know, houseplants and the houseplant trade are, it's a real driving factor behind a lot of that sort of habitat loss and rare species being removed from their natural environments. And so plant poaching is a real and tangible threat. I'd encourage you, any of you who are buying houseplants, and especially particularly rare ones or exotic ones, to really interrogate and investigate where they're coming from and what you're buying, and to make sure that your plants are sourced ethically, because there are a number of plants that, you know, do wind up on the market that are quite forcibly just removed from the environment. And the other thing, I guess, if you know, it's nice to get out in nature and go on the bushwalks and enjoy our plants and everything, or anything out there. But I always go by the rule of look but don't touch. In that, I occasionally see people, you know, picking flowers that they found at a natural park or something, or, you know, taking them home, you know, thinking it's fine to just take a cutting, but we don't really know what it is, and you know, how rare it is, or whether it's unique to that location, or you know, it really just should remain where it is. So yeah, I like to go by that rule of look but don't touch.
Thanks, Ryan. That's a really great perspective, and we could talk about this for hours and hours. And I'm looking forward to it at some point. Um, Perhaps we can all meet again. What do we say, room? What do we say, everybody who is participating today and in our participating audience? Yeah. Anyway, now I'd like to turn our attention to a little bit of writing. Now that we've heard some beautiful writing from our writers, it's time for us to do a little writing of our own. So for this, I'd like you to find some writing utensils, whatever it is that you use, a pen and paper, a writing app, a notes app, or speech to text transcription, whatever it is that you use. And turn your camera on if you feel comfortable, so that we can see each other. I will share screen at some point soon, but if you do want to do share screen and gallery view, then we can all see each other as well. Yeah, great. Let's see if I can share the screen with technical aplomb. Okay. All right, once you have your writing materials with you, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to write the first thing that comes to your mind. You don't have to write anything that's quote unquote good or interesting. It's just for you for now. And the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this. So rest your attention on your plant or your plant cutting. So that might be a plant that's in your space or the one that you conjured a memory of at the beginning of this session. Plant cutting, group of plants, plant environment. And for a couple of minutes, I'd like us to write just a list of words and phrases that come to your mind as you rest your attention on this plant. So I'll give you 2 minutes from now to write as many words down as you can. So for those of you who have just entered the room, what we're doing is we're just doing a little bit of free writing. So just writing whatever comes to your mind, writing down a list of words and phrases that come to your mind as you rest your attention on a plant that's in your space or a plant in your memory. And you've got maybe another 30 seconds max on this. Hello, cat. Okay, wind up the list and let's move on to the next prompt. What if your plant could speak? What would your plant say? Write what comes to mind using your plant's voice. And I'll give you a couple of minutes for this one as well. Starting now. Hello, I just realized I've been on mute this whole time. Hi, everyone. So if you could finish the thought that you're on, that would be great. And turn your attention to the next prompt, which is begin to write a brief story of you through the lens of this plant. Begin to write a brief story of you through the lens of this plant. Just whatever comes to your mind, and I'll give you another couple minutes. Okay, if you'd like to finish the thought that you are on, or the sentence you are on, and come back into the space. It's okay if it's only a beginning. 'Tis only a seedling that we might nourish to grow. And we'll come back into the space very briefly. Hello, everyone. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into breakout rooms of 4 people. And as we do that, I'd like you to read over what you've written and consider if there's like anything that you'd like to share with a stranger. Maybe 1 or 2 words or a sentence that you'd be keen to share. And I'd like you to, give a silent vote of thanks to the plant and the plant life around you. And yeah, as Annie mentioned at the top of this event, this event was originally conceived as sort of like a tribute to plant swapping that happens in our communities of color, in particular. And instead of doing a actual plant swap in person, what we're going to do is do a story swap instead in those breakout rooms. So randomized breakout rooms of 4. Turn your camera on if you are able. And everyone in the group is going to have just under 2 minutes to share a part of their writing. So a few words, a sentence or 2 in your plant's voice, or that brief story of you. And of course, it's all optional. You don't have to share anything at all if you don't want to, but it would be nice to share maybe 1 or 2 words with the folks that you're in a group with. Yes, and after each sort of 2-minute segment, we'll send through a prompt through the voice of Zoom on the top of your screen to ask you to switch up your storyteller. And while you're in the breakout rooms, First Nations folk and elders should speak first, if possible, and keep your shares short and safe for other people to hear. Practice active listening when you can. And also a reminder that you're more than welcome to leave the breakout room at any point you like. You can use the toggle on the top left-hand side of the screen, or you can turn off your camera or leave the space at any point, whatever suits you. And at 1 minute left, we'll send along a message prompt to everyone to come back into the space. How does that sound? Are you excited to meet each other in the space today? Great, awesome. So, the magic breakout room randomized allocation will begin. Thanks, everybody. Just click the join breakout room space once you're ready. We still have a couple of people, a few people not joining breakout spaces, but it might be because they are not in space currently. So, hello. If Marissa's here, hello. Nice to see you, Marissa. It's been a long time. Hi. Okay, cool. Great. I will just assume that everyone's in their spaces. Yep. Cool. So, what happens with... Is Amy here?
I'm here.
Hi, Amy. Hi.
Hi.
I think we can start sending those prompts in now.
Okay.
Like, yeah, if that's the thing.
Will
Just 'cause-
do.
yeah. And then we might trim the thing to 90 seconds instead of 2 minutes, just because, if that is okay.
There's a couple of groups that only have 2 people in them,
Okay.
with others not joining, so
Okay.
less time's probably okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's all right.
Fun. Did anyone in this space have a think about a plant or do some of the writing? Or were we all like, we just shared our stories?
Yep.
Yeah, fair. Thank you for
Oh.
sharing.
It's like I need a second to breathe.
Yeah, that's fair. No, thank you for
Done
sharing
with
those.
words.
We're done with words. No more words.
What are words?
Looking forward to, let's catch up about this after the session. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, sounds good.
Absolutely.
I had my mushroom jumper on hand.
I've got my mushroom shirt.
I know, I saw. It says keep growing.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I just
So, like,
I just
sorry.
submitted a PhD application the other day for a project working on the relationships between greenhood orchids and their fungal partners. So I'd get to work on both plants and fungi, which would be super exciting.
Best.
So excited. I'm really hope I get it.
Yeah, that'll be really cool.
Yep.
We will have an expert in our midst for the thing that we are all equally fascinated by.
They're bizarre. I mean, it's funny when people are like, "Oh, you're a botanist. Does that mean you're really into mushrooms?" And I'm like,
Cool.
it's like going to a zoologist and being like, "Hey, you're a zoologist. Do you really like, I don't know, plants?"
Yeah, that is interesting.
Like I started getting into like looking into their biology, and they're just, the more I learn, the more and more distant they are from plants and anything that I've understood previously.
Pet mushroom.
Wow.
Oh, that would be so great.
Pet mushroom?
Like
Yeah,
there's these gigantic mushrooms in North America that are like just as big as like a small dog.
Oh wow. Oh yes. I think I've not seen one in life. I'd like to.
They make like bread out of them.
Like the
I
puff
saw.
mushroom?
Yeah.
Bread. How exciting.
Although those TikToks concern me, those mushroom forager TikToks, because I'm just like, I don't know where you're picking your mushrooms. Like, it stress me out.
Oh. How do you know they are safe?
Yeah, don't mess with mushrooms unless you know what you're doing.
Yep. Especially in Australia. Like, oh,
Really?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I mean, there are so many mushrooms that look very much like something else, and one
Right.
will be either delicious or will get you super stoned, or
Mm.
the other ones will just completely destroy your liver and your life.
Um,
And yeah, it's really difficult to tell which one's which, and sometimes you kind of need like a microscope to
thank you, Amy.
um
Hell.
yeah.
Okay.
I should find this article that I was reading because I was doing some research on the relationship between First Nations people and mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
which is not a lot like recorded, but there's some early settler kind of observations, which is hard to tell because they're early settler observations and they weren't doing it with microscopes and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a mob in Western Australia, like, are fearful of these type of mushrooms. They're glowing ones,
Oh
and they're
yeah.
thought to have like an evil presence. And
Right.
they're very poisonous and will
Right,
like kill you very easily. But it's very interesting about the like associations with them being evil, to try and keep people from eating them and going near them.
Hmm. Hmm. I think we should do a mushroom event next, Annie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What?
into it.
What? Yeah. Where's the research that you're finding, Laurrie?
Mine, it's just on people's like blogs and
Yeah. Okay.
random things. It's not like very well documented. But I'd love to go like do some like research with mob and get the oral history and culture,
Yeah.
because historically the use of mushrooms was very diverse across different mobs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Makes
depending on
sense.
where you are, and because of Australia's diversity in, I'm sure Ryan would know more, but yeah, the use of fungi across the continent is very different.
Really different. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that's generally quite poorly understood, really. So there is I guess scope to do proper ethnomycological research in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's quite poorly understood.
Interesting.
When I watch the fungi, like I've watched a whole heap of docos on it now, but now it makes me feel guilty about having plants in individual pots,
Yes. Same.
because
Because of the
fungi,
mycelium network. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm like now, but obviously I can't plant a whole bunch of these because
Yeah.
you can't let them go because they're not native.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm like, I have this like, oh,
Push
they're
pull
like
thing.
all alone and they can't just, oh,
Yeah,
I
like they
need it.
can't talk. It's weird. It's really weird
It's
to think that they.
it's I
Stresses
mean, it's
me
a
out.
weird thing because like for the most part, a lot of those mycorrhizal networks are species specific.
Mm,
So sometimes they are, I guess, sort of indiscriminate about which species of plant they associate with, but a lot of the time they're very specific. And like plants will only associate with one species of fungus, and yeah, oftentimes stuff that's not, I guess with the house plants and stuff, yeah, stuff that's not found here and
mm.
that they wouldn't associate with generally.
The culture of.
Which is
And one of the plants I bought started springing mushrooms as
Mhm.
well. So I have a fungi book, so I had to identify it. But every now and then they still spring.
Are they the
They're
yellow
little,
ones?
little
yes,
yellow ones.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
I get
they're
those
yeah,
too.
Coprinopsis. I think.
yeah. Where's
Mhm.
my?
I'm so sorry to interrupt because I'm actually loving this conversation, but
No problem.
I'm just going to tell them that they have a minute left. So you
Yeah.
might start seeing some faces in a minute.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Amy.
That's all good. Keep chatting.
Chatting away. Hi Sri as well, contributing to the chat. Independent botanist. Hello, hi. All breakout rooms will close in 53 seconds. How exciting. I
Oh,
hope they've...
Leucoprinus bernbaumii are usually the little yellow mushrooms that spring up in houseplants.
Interesting.
I'm trying to find my fungi book, but it must be somewhere else. But I just love it, even as a reference book, because I draw as well.
Oh yes, I'd love to see some of those drawings sometime.
Drawing
That'd be cool.
mushrooms.
Drawing.
This one? Have you got this one?
That's the book. That's the book I have. That's exactly it. Oh my god, I love it. Love it.
Busphyra, great photographer.
Yeah. So that's the book I use to draw mushrooms.
They put out
We've been in
Busphyra
our own breakout space.
and someone else put out one about the mosses and lichens of, I think, southeastern Australia, and but it's gone out of print, and I'm so bummed about it. And it's just impossible to find.
Well, if anyone knows where to get obscure plant, moss, and fungi books, please let us know.
Yes, we will find it one day. Welcome back, everybody. Hi, how is everybody? We good? Good, that's really good. Some nods, some thumbs up. We like to see it. So if you'd like to write in the chat, we've only got a few minutes left, but if you'd like to write in the chat sort of what you learn from plants, or any reflections from your breakout rooms, any words, any highlights from any of the stories that you wrote or listened to, either from our writers today or from the folks that you've just met now, feel free to write it in the chat. Great. We've got a contact in the chat. Hello. Hi, Helen. Zora's plant tulips have the same inner critic as you do, Zora. Oh, I hope you're able to sort of nourish and like stroke that inner critic and be like, you're very, very useful, but also not useful sometimes. Terry, my team members have plants that watch them. One was judging, the other was jealous. Plants want more love like people. Yes, I see that too. And so many connections between plants and family. Yeah, beautiful. I'd like to ask our lovely writers, what's one thing that you've learned from plants, either recently or across your lifetime? Shall we start with Laurrie and pass the baton again?
Yeah, I think it's partly to nurture the environment that you're in, and you will flourish, and not to try too hard.
That is fair. That is very fair. Thank you, Laurrie. Who next? Cara.
Oh, I think for me, like the main lessons are about like patience, a lot about patience, because like especially with the herb growing exercise, and also if ever you're trying to cultivate edible plants, like you're just trying to will them to grow, to like bear fruit, but then like you can't force plants to go against their own timeline. Like it's an interesting lesson, because I mean, like all of us try so hard, and like what Laurrie said, maybe we shouldn't try so hard.
Yeah. Thanks, Cara.
Flourish.
Yeah. Patience, flourishing. Don't need to try so hard. Thank you. Ryan?
I think I've got a few key learnings from plants. I think the main one is that everything is all life is all connected. And we are intimately bound to one another, and we all intimately depend on one another. And then, as Cara said, they plants sort of force you to slow down, and you kind of just have to slow down yourself and accept things as they come. And then, also, I guess my own gardening is that, you got to fail to get better. I've killed many plants in my time. Sorry, but you got to make mistakes, and it happens.
Amazing, thank you, Ryan. Annie.
my lessons sort of echo everyone else's of patience, and it's not just what you see, it's not just the blooms, but it's also the roots as well. And yeah, you might not see, there's a lot of hard work that you're not necessarily seeing on the surface.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Annie. And yeah, on that note, let's close out. Thank you, Laurrie. Wow. Mouth no move properly. Thank you, Laurrie, Cara, Ryan, and yeah, for everybody, to everybody here for sharing your stories. Thanks for your time and your presence. And thank you to the plants and the ecosystem that sustains us. Thanks, Annie, for curating. Thanks, Writing New South Wales. Thanks, Boundless. May we just protect and commune with our neighbours as best that we can. For everybody here today, you can look forward to receiving a digital zine in your inboxes shortly with the writing that you heard today, with the stories from Laurrie, Cara, and Ryan, designed by Annie. It's beautiful. There are 3 more events at Boundless Festival. The next one is on care and custodianship, which will be really lovely and will feature Annie. And Annie may talk a little bit more about that concept of how we're all interconnected as well, that Ryan mentioned just briefly. So yeah, head over to the Boundless website for more details. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you for yeah, your brilliant contributions. Nice to return to your childhood, Judy. Yeah. Oh, the lamb is planted by your aunt. Fantastic gardening, keeping you in nature. Beautiful. This is really wonderful. Oh, the life of trees. Great. Really great. Lovely to meet you all. Look after yourselves, look after your neighbours, and yeah, get some nourishment this afternoon. See you all soon. Bye.